Breaking news from Gaza. A deadly explosion has rocked the region, and reports are emerging of massive IDF casualties. What really happened on the ground? Who's behind this devastating blast? Stay tuned as we break down every detail, uncover the truth, and explore what this means for the future of the conflict. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are covering a breaking and highly sensitive development in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Reports are flooding in about a deadly explosion in Gaza that has reportedly resulted in massive IDF casualties. While details are still emerging, the scale of the incident is already being described as one of the most significant blows to Israeli forces in recent months. Eyewitness accounts suggest that the explosion was sudden, powerful, and devastating. Initial reports indicate that the blast may have struck IDF soldiers during a ground operation, though the exact cause remains uncertain. Some sources point to possible planted explosives, while others are speculating about an accidental detonation of stored munitions. The IDF has not yet released an official statement confirming the extent of the losses, but regional media outlets are already claiming heavy casualties. Hamas and other militant factions are praising the incident as a turning point in the ongoing struggle. This event is particularly shocking because it comes at a time when international focus has been on ceasefire negotiations and humanitarian aid convoys. Instead of peace, the explosion has reignited tensions and raised fears of further escalation. In today's video, we'll break this down section by section: what happened, the confirmed details so far, reactions from both sides, global responses, and what this could mean for the future. Stay tuned until the very end for a complete analysis. The first question on everyone's mind is, what exactly caused this explosion? At this stage, reports remain fragmented. Some journalists on the ground suggest that the blast was triggered by a large improvised explosive device (IED) buried beneath a route frequently used by IDF patrols. If true, it would point to a carefully planned ambush, one that required inside knowledge of troop movements. Another possibility raised by military analysts is that the explosion was the result of an accidental detonation within an IDF weapons cache or armored vehicle. Such accidents have occurred in the past, though the political and military implications would differ greatly if this were an accident rather than an attack. Gaza-based sources claim responsibility has not yet been formally taken by Hamas, but celebrations on social media indicate that militant groups see this as a victory. Meanwhile, Israeli sources are keeping details tightly controlled, releasing only limited information about the nature of the blast. It's worth noting that explosions of this magnitude in urban or border areas often have devastating ripple effects. Civilians in nearby districts reported windows shattering, buildings shaking, and even power outages in certain areas. This suggests the explosion's force was significant, possibly involving several hundred kilograms of explosives. As investigators continue to gather evidence, the uncertainty around the cause fuels speculation and propaganda. Each side seeks to control the narrative, and the truth will likely take time to fully emerge. What makes this event particularly significant is the scale of reported casualties. While exact numbers are not yet verified, local media outlets are claiming that dozens of IDF soldiers may have been killed or severely wounded in the blast. If confirmed, this would mark one of the single deadliest incidents for Israeli forces in the Gaza theater in recent years. Such losses not only affect the morale of the troops on the ground, but also shake public opinion back in Israel. Military families anxiously await confirmation, while opposition politicians begin pressuring the government to explain how such an event could happen under their watch. Casualties on this scale also raise difficult questions for Israeli leadership. Was intelligence ignored? Were the soldiers properly equipped? Were there lapses in coordination? These questions will dominate Israeli media as more details emerge. For Gaza-based groups, however, the narrative is already being framed as a resistance victory. Public celebrations in certain neighborhoods reportedly broke out shortly after news of the incident spread. Militants often use such moments to rally support, both locally and internationally, portraying themselves as defenders against Israeli aggression. It's important to remember that casualties in conflict are not just statistics. Each represents a life lost, a family shattered, and a community grieving. The human cost is immense on both sides of this decades-long conflict, and explosions like this deepen the cycle of retaliation and suffering. One of the key angles to examine is the timing of this explosion. The incident occurred just as discussions about a potential ceasefire and humanitarian corridor were gaining momentum. For many observers, this raises the question: was the explosion designed to sabotage peace talks? Hamas has historically used high-profile attacks to exert pressure during negotiations, leveraging battlefield events for political advantage. On the other hand, if the explosion was accidental or due to IDF mishandling of munitions, it could simply be an unfortunate tragedy at a delicate moment. International mediators, particularly Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations, are likely to view this event as a setback. Any chance of a near-term ceasefire may now be delayed as both sides retreat to more hardened positions. Israel may feel compelled to respond militarily, while Gaza-based factions may use the incident to demand concessions. The timing also matters domestically. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is already under intense pressure for his handling of the conflict, with protests and political challenges mounting. An incident of this magnitude could further weaken his position, forcing him into either a more aggressive stance or a difficult concession. Ultimately, whether by design or by accident, this explosion has come at a moment when the region was in desperate need of stability. Instead, it has thrown the fragile situation into deeper uncertainty. The military response from Israel is now the focus of speculation. Historically, incidents resulting in significant IDF casualties have been met with overwhelming retaliatory strikes on Gaza. If Israel confirms heavy losses, it is almost certain that a large-scale military operation will follow. Already, unverified reports suggest Israeli aircraft have been active in Gaza airspace since the explosion. Social media videos show jets overhead and explosions in certain districts, though official confirmation is still pending. If the IDF chooses to escalate, it could target Hamas leadership compounds, weapons storage sites, and infrastructure believed to be linked to militant operations. However, such strikes often also impact civilian areas, leading to international condemnation and further humanitarian crisis. For Gaza residents, the fear of retaliation looms heavily. Families are reportedly preparing for renewed bombings, stocking up on food and water where possible. The cycle of violence, attack, retaliation, counterattack, appears poised to repeat itself once again. At the same time, military analysts caution that a heavy-handed Israeli response may not solve the underlying issue. Instead, it risks further inflaming tensions, emboldening militants, and drawing global criticism. The world now waits to see whether Israel opts for restraint or chooses a path of escalation. History suggests the latter is more likely, especially given the political pressure on the current government. The international reaction to this explosion has been immediate. Within hours, statements began pouring in from capitals across the globe. The United Nations called for restraint, warning that escalation would worsen the already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Humanitarian organizations are urging both sides to protect civilians as fears of retaliatory strikes grow. The United States, Israel's strongest ally, expressed deep concern and called for an investigation into the incident. While Washington continues to affirm Israel's right to defend itself, officials are also wary of being drawn into another regional crisis. The Biden administration has been under increasing pressure from its own citizens to address civilian suffering in Gaza. Meanwhile, Arab nations are condemning Israel and framing the explosion as proof that occupation policies are failing. Countries such as Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey have demanded international accountability and warned against disproportionate retaliation. These nations may also use the moment to push for renewed peace talks, though history suggests such momentum rarely lasts. In Europe, reactions are divided. Some governments maintain strong support for Israel, while others are increasingly critical of the humanitarian toll. Protests have already been reported in major cities, with demonstrators demanding an end to violence. The global media has amplified the story, with headlines describing the explosion as a potential turning point in the conflict. Whether this attention leads to constructive diplomacy or simply fuels division remains to be seen. One aspect often overlooked in major incidents is the impact on civilians. For people living in Gaza, the aftermath of the explosion is yet another reminder of the constant danger they face. Residents in nearby neighborhoods reported chaos and fear as the blast echoed across the city. Families rushed to shelters, unsure if more explosions would follow. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is already severe, with limited electricity, food shortages, and hospitals running at near capacity. Even one explosion places enormous strain on the system. Injured civilians are often left waiting for medical treatment, and children continue to suffer the most. For Israeli civilians, the news of IDF casualties sparks a different kind of trauma. Many families have loved ones serving in the military, and the uncertainty of who was affected brings waves of anxiety. The broader population also braces for potential rocket fire in retaliation if Israel responds militarily. Sirens and alerts are common in border towns, disrupting daily life. These dual experiences, fear in Gaza, fear in Israel, illustrate the cycle of suffering that defines this conflict. Every escalation brings with it new waves of loss and trauma. Beyond immediate suffering, incidents like this deepen divisions between communities, making peace seem increasingly distant. While political leaders and military groups debate strategies, ordinary families continue to live with uncertainty, grief, and fear. From a strategic perspective, this explosion raises serious questions for Israel's military command. The IDF has invested heavily in intelligence, surveillance, and technology designed to prevent such ambushes or accidents. If dozens of soldiers were indeed killed, it represents a significant intelligence and security failure. Opposition voices in Israel are already seizing on this, criticizing the government for complacency. Some argue that Prime Minister Netanyahu's focus on political survival has distracted from military readiness. Others claim that over-reliance on technology, such as drones and sensors, has left ground troops more vulnerable to traditional tactics like explosives. For Gaza-based groups, the explosion highlights their ability to inflict damage despite overwhelming Israeli firepower. Even if not officially claimed, the event serves as proof that conventional armies remain vulnerable to asymmetric tactics. This has the potential to inspire other groups in the region, a concern Israel's allies will watch closely. The IDF will likely respond by adjusting its operational strategies, possibly pulling back troops, increasing airstrikes, or tightening intelligence gathering. However, such adjustments take time and often come after painful losses. Strategically, this blast shows that no amount of advanced weaponry or intelligence guarantees security in such a volatile conflict. It underscores the vulnerability of soldiers on the ground and the unpredictability of warfare in Gaza's complex environment. Looking beyond the battlefield, this explosion will almost certainly have political consequences. In Israel, Netanyahu faces mounting criticism for his leadership during the conflict. Opponents are already framing the incident as proof of government mismanagement, while supporters argue that it underscores the need for strong, decisive action. The incident could strengthen hardliners within the government who advocate for harsher military operations. At the same time, it may embolden protesters who demand an end to the conflict and a focus on peace negotiations. The political divide in Israel is already sharp, and this tragedy risks widening it further. In Gaza, militant groups will use the incident to rally public support, portraying themselves as defenders against occupation. Such narratives are powerful in times of hardship, and they often help strengthen recruitment and morale. Internationally, the incident puts new pressure on governments that support Israel, especially the United States and European allies. Calls for accountability, investigations, and diplomatic interventions are expected to grow louder. Ultimately, the political consequences of this explosion may last longer than the military impact. Governments rise and fall on their ability to protect citizens and soldiers, and this event will be a test for leaders on both sides. So as we close today's coverage, one thing is clear. This explosion has changed the dynamics of the Israel-Gaza conflict, at least for now. Whether caused by a calculated attack or a tragic accident, the result is the same: massive loss of life, deepening trauma, and heightened risk of escalation. For Israel, the challenge will be balancing public anger and the demand for retaliation with the long-term need for stability. For Gaza, the event reinforces both the resilience of its militants and the vulnerability of its civilians. The international community now faces renewed pressure to intervene diplomatically, but history suggests that peace is elusive. Incidents like this remind us that beyond the politics and strategies are human lives, soldiers, families, children, and communities caught in a cycle of violence. The question is whether this tragedy will push leaders toward escalation or toward solutions that prevent further suffering. Thank you for watching today's deep dive analysis. We will continue to follow this story as more details emerge, so make sure you stay tuned. If you found this video informative, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And let us know in the comments, what do you think this incident means for the future of the conflict? Your opinions matter, and we read every comment.